I have to pay the rent. I have to eat. So these great DPs and directors, look at Christopher Guest. His films come along once in a while and they're always great, but he's out there shooting commercials, and that's where he makes his money. And it's a pretty crazy world out here in LA that, you may do, a film every couple of years, but that lasts for just a short burst. You still have to work.
Steak or hamburgers.
Yeah,
your choice.
That's it, man.
One year one year the other. But it is so much about sort of not forgetting that film is a business, and that's really the big question. How do you reconcile the fact that somebody's got to make their money back with the fact that you want to do good quality material and make it work? And that's always, you when you're playing with other people's money, you got to be responsible for that. And it's making sure that what you're doing is sort of worthy enough to make their money back, even if it's at a popcorn level. There's nothing wrong with that. Six String Samurai, I love stuff like that. I love, like action films. I love, goofy comedy. There's a large part of my personality that does that. And even if you watch my earlier films, they still had a real sense of heart to them. That's what I always try to bring to it, but
yeah,
at the same time,
let me jump in, Lance, before we run out of time. Six String Samurai, which for me has everything thrown into that film that I love. It's post-apocalyptic, so you have that side of things. You have the science fiction side. You have the music side. Your lead character, was his last name Holly? I can't remember.
Buddy, yeah.
Yeah, his buddy. And some of the best fight scenes and choreographed fight scenes. And it was just in a weird way, it was a buddy picture. I just said buddy 3 times. But there's that part of it. But the science fiction element, you had the music set in it was like late 1950s, right? And,
that's right.
And I remember the first time that I saw it, I grabbed Reed. I'm like, you got to watch this flick. This thing is like really cool. Where did the idea come from? Because you did the mix of science fiction and late 1950s music and a character that I guess you could say was, Buddy Holly. It's just a great idea. Where'd it come from?
Well, it was this whole idea of, well, first of all, from a larger perspective, it was about, sort of like an exploration of just cinema, man. I had so much fun making that film because it was about sort of just all of the things I loved in film the same way. Originally I had met Jeff Falcon, who was the star of the film, and he had done some films in Hong Kong. He studied at the Beijing Physical Sports Academy with Jet Li, and he was one of these guys that was sort of playing villains in the Hong Kong film scene, because white guys play villains in China. That's the way it works, And I'd met him and I wanted to do something with him, and I was in film school at the time, and I was wearing these kind of Buddy Holly-esque Ray-Ban glasses. But because I was in film school, I had no money, and my glasses had broke, and I hadn't fixed them. I had them kind of taped up, and they were kind of scratched. And we were sitting in a diner at like 3 in the morning, or like some Denny's or something, and sort of trying to hash out what we could do for an action script. And I really didn't want to do something that was just conventional. I wanted to do something that reflected the stuff that I liked and was sort of, I felt different. And he goes, man, how do you even see out of those glasses? It's like, geez, and they're like all taped up and dirty. And I said, well, here, you try them on, because I knew the prescription was so bad he wouldn't be able to see anything. And he tried them on, and he goes, oh man, that's bad. And I laughed, and I said, dude, you look a lot like Buddy Holly. and he laughed, and I said, oh my God, that's it. Let's do a movie that's like a kick-ass Buddy Holly, basically I loved Red Dawn, and I loved this idea that, the Russians could invade America. And I said, what would have happened if they would have invaded in 1957 when rock and roll was first starting, and Buddy Holly became this like samurai knight, to defend the country. It was just a silly idea, but at the same time, I wanted to take something really silly and make it totally badass. And that's what we did. That started the germ of the idea, and it was really all built around duct tape and sort of just what we had on hand. And
well, you don't need much. There's no sets to build, right? It's all gone.
There was. We actually, the first part of it was done as a film school project, and the second part of it was actually financed by what later became Lionsgate. And so it wound up with a slightly larger budget. I mean, small by today's standards, and still just like $1.5 million total, I think. But it was meager, but we did. I mean, Jeff, who was the star, was also the production designer. He was down in the middle of the night, cutting out costumes and stuff for people to wear. So
it's funny.
It was a labor of love for sure. But
I'm watching Twitter right now. Somebody just tweeted. Leslie says, I used to watch that film every time it was on. I got addicted to it the first time that I saw it. And I know that you hear that all the time because it turned into, dude, you got one of the cult things in your back pocket. And that's hard to do in Hollywood. That's a rare thing. How many people have come up to you and said, dude, the fight scenes were just, and I'm being serious too. I'm not joking about this.
Well, it's always, for me, what's so cool now is and actually the editor of Third Eye Spies, his name is Tom Bacci, and he started as a fan of Six String Samurai. He actually contacted me on Facebook and just reached out to me and said, hey, man, I'm a director and an editor, and I'd love to just get some tips. And I get people doing that a lot, which is very surprising to me because I don't seek anybody out, and every now and then I'll get together with somebody or we'll talk on the phone or whatever, and I love doing that. I love being able to give back in that way because it's so fulfilling for me, and to be able to share all of the good stuff and the bad stuff that I've been through.
Who is Lance? I have to ask really quick. Who did you DP that yourself?
No, Christian Bernier, who's a friend of mine, he DP'd it and was actually his first feature film. He went on and did many after that, but that was his first. He was actually right out of Florida State, and I was still in Loyola at that time. And we went on and did some other things together, and he went on and did several other films.
He's really good. And he's really good. And so what about, did you give him the freedom to frame, or did you frame everything yourself?
The underlying sort of tenet of the entire film was, wouldn't it be cool if
right
at the beginning every sentence,
right.
And literally what we did was drive around locations all over California and Nevada, different places, and look for the coolest places to shoot and do fight scenes, and then stand there and just hold our fingers out and go, oh, this is the frame right here. So it was very much a collaboration on every level. I mean, it was one of those things where it's like if you don't really care who gets credit, then you're going to, I think John Wooden said, if you don't care who gets credit, you're going to get so much more accomplished, and it was never like, okay, this is your job, this is mine. It was just totally a collaboration and just a love of film.
Yeah. Tell me the truth, man. You didn't have the director's chair that said director on the back,
I couldn't even afford it. I think I had an ice chest sometimes.
We years ago, this is like 10 years ago, and I could talk about this now, and I'm going to say this really brief. I just want to hear you laugh, okay? So my brother-in-law rents out his facility that he had, Rita's brother, here in the Valley, and to location scouts, right? So there's location, and they shoot. They bring in this, independent film. Cool. They did the whole thing. They, the catering, and it was all good. It was fun. So anyway, I'm watching the assistant director, who I thought was the director, set up all of these scenes, and they shot one shooting. But sitting there was the director's chair that said director on the back. And I'm walking around. This is my brother-in-law's place. I'm walking around being a little dickish, like I own the place. And I was, they were doing some playback. And so I go up and I sit in the director's chair. Right. And I'm looking at this playback, and this dude pulls up in a town car, in a Lincoln town car, gets out with like two chicks. I'm not making this up. I swear, the most cliche thing ever for Hollywood. Gets out. He's got the scarf around his neck and the trench coat, and I didn't even know who he was. So I turn around. I'm still sitting in his chair, and I'm watching the playback, and he comes up and he goes, "Hey man, get up." I'm like, who are you? I'm the director.
If you tell me his name is Lance Mungia, man, I'm going to hang up.
Right. And I just had attitude. And I watched this guy sit down and like say action. And we've been working for 14 hours, you know, and
Yeah.
he shows up at 9 o'clock at night with these two chicks. Anyway, long story short, he sat down, action, cut, and like got up and walked around and goofed off and then split. I'm not making that up. The assistant director shot I went back and sat in that chair for the rest of the night with attitude. So that's what I was saying. I hope you're not that guy.
No, man, that would be nice, wouldn't it? You know, if I could just show up, you know, say action and then cut. No, but, you know, they say that, you know, Hitchcock used to direct all his movies in storyboard before he ever even stepped on the set, so he didn't even have to be there. And there is a ton of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and I always say the director's job is just don't make a bad movie. You know, you're the guy that like is just playing chess and figuring out which pieces you're going to lose so that you still remain with, you know, something that is not terrible at the end.
That's right.
And it's a miracle anytime somebody makes a good movie. I mean, it really is. I mean, you know, it takes such an amount of effort and love. I mean, that's why, you know, it's you can't just cookie cutter make movies, because it's you know, there's something about the creative process and the collaboration. It's an evolving art form still.
I'm watching Twitter here. Everybody's posting pictures of a six string. It's pretty cool. Now, we're going to be headed towards a break. And I've watched the trailer for Third Eye Spies, and the reason why I asked you about the framing and your DP on that, you know, how that was done, tell me about who is framed, because it looks really good. The trailer looks really, really good. You've taken care to what you're doing. So are you doing that yourself?
I have an amazing cinematographer. His name is Monty Rowan, and he's actually a director of photography and cameraman on everything from like The Blind Side to A Simple Plan to Year One, Bad Teacher. You know, he does a lot of second unit, and he's a camera operator usually on those shoots, but he's been around for many years, and he and I are old friends. And he and I are actually making a couple of documentaries together. We're making another music documentary, and you know, we just have a lot of fun shooting together. You know, and a lot of it is done. Sometimes we use you know, like red cameras, higher end cameras. Sometimes it'll just be DSLRs, and we'll just grab cameras and go, oh wow, it's like the other day we took Russell out into the rain in Monrovia here, where on the main street at like 3 in the morning, because it was so incredibly beautiful, and Russell was like a complete trooper and was like, wow, this is so beautiful, we should go out and shoot it, and got him walking, you know, in what looks like this just quaint European town with all these lights everywhere, and it's just like, it's epic. It's epic, and you'd never be able to get that with a huge crew and all kinds of heavy equipment and stuff, because it would cost way too much money to do for us. But again, just that's how I always tend to operate best, is when you're just in that spirit of like, you know, wouldn't it be cool if we could just do this? You know, and
I mean, because it's got a look to it, and I hope that the look that, from what I have seen, continues. And for a documentary to take that kind of care for the look and the epic feel and widescreen and have all of that look in the film for a documentary is awesome. And I don't know if it's... Man. And you know what I'm talking about. You've taken the time to do that. And
it is. And Monty and I are constantly having conversations about how we can do things that fit the themes of the film cinematically. And you know, like we went to Vegas, and there's a remote viewing conference in Vegas every year called the IRVA conference. Mm-hmm. And I shot Russell on the Strip in Vegas in a car, and you'd never know you're in Vegas. You know, we did not want to do the cheesy kind of like, oh, here's the Paris and here's the this and that. It was just with this very, very long lens through a window, and just reflections of light everywhere all around him. And he looks like this incredibly cool mad scientist sitting in this like laboratory with just light everywhere, and it's like Blade Runner, you know. And I mean, and we just, you know, practically, you know, fell over when we saw the footage and how it looked, because it was so beautiful, but it fits this theme of things being revealed from behind the veil, you know, just stuff that is that hard to grasp, and reflections and things with more than one meaning and multiple realities coming together. And it's just it's beautiful visual film. I really you know, the funnest part for me is just going through the B-roll and finding the things to sort of fit with what people are saying. And by the way, during the break, if you get a moment, on thirdeyespies.com, I just posted a shorter trailer that Tom just cut which is like a minute and a half. It's just more of a kind of a grabber. Which people can check out if they go on there right now. I just posted it like 20 minutes ago.
Cool. We'll get that posted up right here on Twitter during the break. This is Fade to Black tonight. It is Lance Mungia and Russell Targ and their new documentary, Third Eye Spies, about the CIA's 20-year remote viewing program up at the Stanford Research Institute. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. We'll be back. More with Lance right after this.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA Digital Broadcast Station.
People love to shop. What if you could shop and it was actually good for you? What if you could actually purchase items that bettered your life? What goes into your body is important to what quality of life you have. How about shopping for items that better your health? GetTheT.com is that shopping place. We're not only tea, even though that's our #1 seller, we are about helping your health. There's Colostrum LD for those of you with autoimmune troubles. The product helps your stomach get on track. GI problems produce pain. Get relief with Colostrum LD. How about some fat burners? Or maybe some joint aid? Or a power cleanse? There's so much to tell you with very little time. So get help, health-wise, at GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Or you can call our friendly operators at 928-308-0408. That's 928-308-0408. Get help and relief by going shopping. Shop at GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Serving people with great products for over 8 years. GetTheT.com.
Imagine no longer being tied down to your computer, but having the freedom to take live talk radio with you anywhere you go. TalkStream Live introduces our first ever iPhone application. The talk shows you follow now follow you, and your iPhone is now the fastest and easiest way to stay connected to the best talk radio on the internet. Let TalkStream Live transform the way you listen to radio. Listen to live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mobile talk radio from TalkStream Live. Now available in the iTunes App Store.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And this is Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
Yes.
We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
Hello, Fadernauts. Are you looking for the ultimate Bluetooth speaker system? Well, check this out. The Studio Dome surround sound system, featuring the Studio Dome 1 SD1 and the Studio Boombox SBB wireless Bluetooth speakers, is the perfect way to get surround sound without all of the cable headaches. With its own hard shell custom carrying case for taking your surround sound experience on the go. Each hard shell case comes packed with an SBB, 2 SD1s, cables, and power. It's just $99, and you use the promo code Jimmy, and you get yourself some free shipping. Once again, Studio Dome brings you the best deal on the net. Anywhere. Just go to the Studio Dome banner, jimmychurchradio.com, promo code Jimmy. Go Beckley Teppy.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. Tonight, Lance Mungia is with us. talking about his new documentary. It's called Eye Spies. I was watching it during the break, and I've got it up here. You can go to thirdeyespies.com if you want to see. He's got a full teaser, and then he's got a 1.5-minute teaser here that I was just watching. And I'm going to mute that because I'm going to watch the rest of it. Lance, this is where I got to go. I'm watching the trailer off to my left as we talk. This is a pretty deep, actually, and it gets dark, subject. The CIA's involved, ESP, of course, remote viewing, but everything that comes along with that, the Department of Defense, secret budgets, spies, all of that. What did you learn going into it that you didn't know?
Oh man, what didn't I learn? What it was for me has been a complete life-changing experience, man. Because I've been doing this film for over 1.5 years, almost 2 years, and I've interviewed, everybody that we could really find that worked with Russell in the remote viewing program. And the thing that surprised me more than anything else was whether I'm talking to a scientist, a politician, a army guy that was a grizzled Vietnam vet. All of these guys, at the end of the day, wind up sounding like Buddhist monks. Whether they're talking about quantum mechanics or they're talking about just how it changed their lives personally. It seems like it made a dramatic impact in all of their lives, including Russell's, big time. I think that to me was the most shocking thing, was that you could take something that the government was trying to basically weaponize in a way, or at least find ways to defend against, and that it would somehow impact people's lives in a way that was actually beneficial.
What about did you wear the hat of skeptic too as well? Were you questioning whether the project was real?
Absolutely. I started, this whole thing started actually because Russell saw Six String Samurai. And he had seen it, like a bootleg of it on YouTube or something, and he called me. He reached out to me, and he said, I would love for you to make a movie. And he wasn't even talking about making the movie of his life story or the remote viewing program or anything like that. He was actually, just sort of speaking in more general terms about doing something about the remote viewing, because I think Russell's real wish is to share the fact that everybody in the world is psychic and they just don't know it. They haven't been given permission to do it. And initially I kind of thought, well, okay, I remember the program. I'd actually heard of Russell and Hal Puthoff, his partner, through some books that I'd read and thought that it might make an interesting film, but I never really actually had 100% gotten the scope of it or knew what was real or what wasn't. And he offered to fly out to L.A., and he lives in San Francisco, and so he flew out, and we spent 3 days just talking, which was alone a beautiful experience. But at the same time, he's got this very scientific, matter-of-fact, logical point of view of this whole subject, where it almost becomes old hat. It's almost boring. And yet at the same time, the things that he's saying are so extraordinary. And I'm listening to this, and I'm going, I don't know, man. I mean, a guy sits in a room in Palo Alto and he draws this crane in Siberia, and they're finding down bombers, and there's Russian spies after them, and there's all this other stuff going on in the Soviet Union where they're trying to learn how to strangle people and all this kind of stuff, and these remote viewers are in the army. And I thought, man, is this real or not? Because it was so hard to believe. And it wasn't until the third day, and I wasn't convinced to actually make the film. Honestly, I was like, well, I don't know if there's a film here. And then finally he starts talking about House Congressional Committee meetings, hearings, Intelligence Committee meetings, the fact that presidents were briefed, the fact that, the scope of the politicians who were supporters of this for 20 years straight. And then I went, hold on. This is all documentable. This is all, findable in Freedom of Information Act. I can go check these things. I can actually, and then I realized that what I was suffering from was the same thing that I think the entire public suffers from on this subject and subjects like it, which is that it's so incredible that your mind finds ways to kind of go, well, maybe this guy's just out to lunch or doesn't know what he's talking about. And then you start to realize, wait a minute, he's actually not just brilliant. He's been doing this so long that it's just old hat to him. He's not in debate whether these things are real, and then I realized that the reason that this hadn't broken through larger was because it's kind of like, does a tree make a sound in the forest if no one hears it? Russell had been out there and actually was one of the more successful people already in sort of promoting what he had done and writing books and going out and speaking about it and teaching and lecturing. And there were other people doing the same thing, but everybody was their own monolithic voice and their own monolithic way of doing it and talking about it. And whenever you would play a YouTube video of one guy speaking about it, you think, well, maybe this guy's just, trying to sell me a book, or maybe this guy's just sort of making stuff up. He's schizophrenic, and then you start to realize the weight of all of the people for decades that were involved in this research, many, many people. And then you go, hold on. The only issue here is that they haven't gotten collectively together to support each other's testimony. And I started kind of likening it to the Holocaust. It's nothing at all like the Holocaust, but the fact that you can deny the Holocaust because it is so incredible. It's such unbelievable thing that someone would go out and kill that many people, and it's so unbelievable that huge governments would use tools like psychic ability in their arsenal of intelligence. That's so unbelievable that you think, well, it just couldn't happen. But the weight of testimony, when all of a sudden you start interviewing a Nobel Prize winner and an Apollo astronaut and, really credible scientists with PhDs and decorated military veterans, Joe McMoneagle, who has the Legion of Merit, which was the highest award that you can get in the military for intelligence gathering for non-combatant, and second highest, sorry. And that, to me, was the reason to make the documentary, because when these guys go, there's nobody left to say that it actually happened. It just becomes pieces of paper, and they're very hard to believe pieces of paper. And so that is why I decided to do the documentary. And
you left out Jimmy Carter too, as well.
That's right.
I mean, went all the way to the Oval Office, and he pretty much, I could be wrong, I want your opinion on this, but he kind of blew it for everybody.
He did. You're right, and that is in the documentary.
You covered it.
Dale Graff was the head of the DIA's program that the Army, was using, and Dale said that basically a huge reason that the program was canceled in '95 was because Carter accidentally outed it when someone asked him, what was the weirdest thing that you ever saw in your presidency? And he said, well, it wasn't the UFO. It was actually that we didn't know where this downed bomber was, and it was lost somewhere in the Congo, and the CIA director came to me and said they could find it. There's a couple psychics in California that could find it for me. And they did. And that was at Avery University at a speech that he gave, and I was looking for footage of this. It was reported in the paper, but there was no footage. And I looked and looked. I even was going to reach out to the Alumni Association, and Hal Puthoff's wife went there, and she was going to help me with this whole thing. And then one day I'm walking past Fromm Books in Pasadena, and here is this big poster of Carter. And it says he's coming to Pasadena for a book signing. So I call Russell, and I'm like, Russell, can you come out to L.A.? Let's see if we can corner Carter, and get him to talk about this. And that's exactly what we did. We brought Russell out. We got him shaking hands with Carter. He didn't really say much there, but we did find at the same time a soundbite where he talked about it.
Yeah, I've heard the audio. I've heard the audio of that, and he says exactly that.
Oh yeah, and not only that, but as I'm on the phone with Russell, I went in, I bought Carter's book, and I'm sitting on the bench outside the store. I'm flipping through it, and I find a chapter called Clairvoyance, and it tells the story. He wrote it in his biography.
What did he say? What was it that you did get to ask him?
I could aggrandize it, but actually very little, because the Secret Service was incredibly gruff. I mean, basically Russell just got to shake his hand and say he'd worked for him, and that was it. But it's the book and the fact that we did wind up getting a soundbite from Carter talking about the whole thing, and that to me is golden, because it's beyond reproach. Even when I would tell people this story, without Carter's own voice saying it,
right?
They don't believe it. Now, I've actually literally sat down and said, look, here's the Chicago Tribune or whatever, the article that was talked about this. And they said, well, yeah, but did Carter ever actually say this? Because I don't believe it. And I really think there's something fundamental to human nature where, we just will not accept something if it's outside of our realm of comfort. As soon as it's uncomfortable, we just don't want to hear it.
Now, really quick, Lance, did you get any assistance from the CIA?
I did. We actually got a surprising amount of assistance from not directly the CIA, but although technically we did, because we actually interviewed the first program director of the SRI, the psychic team, which is Ken Kress. And Ken Kress has never been on film before. He's kind of a legend just because he had written a paper called Parapsychology and Intelligence Gathering. And that paper detailed the exploits of Pat Price, who is one of the people we feature in the documentary, and talks about the fact that not only did he draw and describe things halfway around the world in Soviet Siberia that were considered top secret and that nobody knew about, he even wrote down code words, that were in a top secret NSA listening post in Virginia. And he got the code words correct when no one else could have known them,
right,
along with Ingo Swann, who also detailed that site. And that to me was pretty blow mind and pretty hard to believe, but especially when it comes secondhand. And I was stunned, absolutely stunned, when Ken finally agreed, and it wasn't easy. It took a lot of back and forth for all of the CIA people who we spoke with to actually be in the documentary. But Ken, I think, had been bugged by what he had seen his entire life. Because he is not a true believer. He is a skeptic, and he wanted to be skeptical, and yet he could not fully explain the events that he participated in, and so I think he felt that it was worth it to speak about them, and I'm so grateful to Ken for he invited us into his home, and we I spent almost a week hanging out with him. And,
I've seen the clips of him. How old is he now?
Oh, he's in his 70s.
Yeah, he's up there.
He's in good shape. And then we also interviewed the former director of life sciences for CIA, Kit Green.
Now, stop. That's my next question. Okay, so let's stop. We need to stop there because Kit is the man. So let's stop there for a second. Pat Price, he died in like 1975 or something, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
That's 77, I believe. No, maybe it was 75.
Yeah.
I forget. Yeah.
Okay. You have to go with my brain on this, and it's pretty polluted. But and of course, Ingo is no longer with us. Hal is still here. I want to talk about Hal in a second. But Kit Green. So you got to talk to the man himself. How old is Kit these days?
Oh, he's got to be in his mid-70s. Still looks awesome. Still a criminologist and and basically a brain surgeon.
Now, tell everybody who Kit Green was in the project, though.
Well, Kit Green was the CIA, I guess you'd say, contract monitor.
The handler
for the CIA,
right?
And he's the guy who basically was concerned that the Soviet Union was using psychics to spy on U.S. personnel, and he thought that it was bogus. So he decided, but he knew that SRI was Stanford Research Institute was studying psychic abilities, studying ESP. So he showed up to Russell and to Hal Puthoff's office, and he says, guys, I think this is bogus. But if you can prove to me that it's not, then we'll fund you. The CIA will fund your activities. And he said, I'm going to give you some coordinates. You're going to take those coordinates and tell me what's at them. Because at the time SRI was doing something called coordinate remote viewing, where all they would do is give a psychic some numbers. And longitude and latitude, and the psychic would then draw what he saw at that location, by closing his eyes and picturing it. He would, give you impressions and whatnot. They would put that in a file, and then they would discover if it was real. And they found out it was very, very accurate. And so they tried it. They came back with all of this data, both Pat Price and Ingo Swann independently, about a top secret NSA base. They didn't know it was NSA, but it was basically, it looked like a military base, underground levels. There were big filing cabinets, and they had certain documents in them with code names. Got all of these things, wrote them down. Hal and Russell send it back to the CIA. Kit reads it and goes, "This is bogus. I gave them the coordinates to my buddy's cabin out in the woods. This doesn't mean anything." And then he calls Russell and says, "This is bogus." And Russell says, "Well, that's a shame because both psychics got the same result independently." The kid goes, "What?" So he says, "Yeah, well, I'm not too far. I'm in Langley. I'm not too far from the cabin. I'll drive out there, see what's out there." He drives out there and he notices over a ridge are radar dishes. And he's like, whose radar dishes are those? What are those big things out there? He figures out it's an NSA base, and he sends them the material. And next thing you know, the FBI, the NSA, the CIA, everybody descends on SRI and says, "What the hell are you guys doing? How did you know this information?" And that is how the program started.
Now, Kit Green was a spook, right? That was his gig for the CIA.
That's right.
And he looked back in the day like a spook, right? Yeah. Do you look at the pictures and you're like, yeah, okay, that's Hal. Okay, that's Pat. Okay, I'm cool. That's Russell. I'm good. Who's that guy? Right? Because he looks like a spy. He looks like a spook. He looks like a Fed. What's his character like today? Was he open about everything, or was he still spookish?
I think once you're in that life, it's like peeling away layers of an onion. I mean, all of this is like peeling away layers of onion, and the CIA has been involved in many, many, many things that we do or do not know about, and so it's incredibly hard to say when someone is speaking really, really, truly 100% openly with you. I think, in my opinion, Ken Kress, he's simply in the documentary because he is conflicted about the things that he'd seen. Kit, I have no idea. Kit is a brilliant man. I mean, I interviewed 30 different people about who Kit was that worked with Kit, and he's a very, very fascinating character in this. But he also is. He was incredibly nice, incredibly gracious. We went to his office in where he worked as a doctor on this hospital. And I was actually amazed, and so was Monty, my cinematographer. We're sort of blown away by the fact that we were just walking down the hall, as people were passing by, and here he is in his lab coat, talking about these sort of formerly top secret items that the CIA had dealt with. And Kit has his own point of view. I mean, I think Kit, I don't know how much time in the actual documentary I have to cover everybody's point of view, but I definitely know that he is at odds with some of the other people in the remote viewing community about how remote viewing works, about sort of the medical implications of it. He's got his own school of thought, and when you're dealing with somebody like him, you never know. Are they still doing it or not? He says he's still consulting, but he's no longer involved with the CIA. So
the program.
That actually makes. Yeah. I think that's one of the funnest things for me as a director and for the film itself is that there is this element of where you have to use your own discernment when you look at these things and you go, where is this going to go? Like, who's accurate with this? Where is this going? And that's part of the fun of the film. Is sort of getting the take on these people, but he was nothing but gracious, and I could go on and on about all the different stories and stuff.
Well, let's talk about Hal and what he's doing today. We've got about 5 minutes left here, really quick. So I want to talk about Hal. And really quick, leading into this, did you get any indication from anybody, directly or indirectly, that the program is still ongoing? Well,
that's what Kit says. But he's speaking secondhand and he's speculating. So it's like I can't say, but at the same time, I would think that if you have a really cheap, good intelligence tool, where it really doesn't cost you anything, that you would be pretty foolish to ignore it.
Right.
And I would think that, and especially because I've also spoken to people in corporations and in industry about this. Russell himself, he made 6 figures in the stock market playing silver futures in the 80s and as an experiment. And there's people doing that all the time. and they're using that. Marty Rosenblatt, another physicist in the movie, he runs sports betting groups. And they go. I actually went with them to a casino in Vegas, and for 3 days, my girlfriend and I played, with them, betting on sporting events, using remote viewing. And they don't do it in like, who's going to win kind of a way. It's a little more scientific than that, but it's I'd say they probably have an accuracy of 70%, 75%.
And
so
that's a whole show we should talk about one day. Hal Puthoff, who was there from the beginning too with Russell, what is he doing today?
Well, Hal, who was the co-founder with Russell of the SRI program, he is now running an energy research group in Austin that basically, it's a laboratory, looks like your standard mad scientist laboratory with beakers and neon and all this stuff, where he will test free energy devices. And if someone thinks they've invented free energy, they're getting energy from the vacuum, they've made a device where more energy is going out than was put in to make it, they will come to his lab and they will test it. And this is the job that he left SRI for in the 80s. Early 90s, I think. He left SRI in a huge contract there to do more ESP stuff for the intelligence community to go and start this lab in Austin. And that's what he's doing. And just as a really quick side note on Hal, here's a guy who he told me, I said, what did you used to do for the NSA? Because he actually used to work for the NSA years ago when he first started in naval intelligence. And I said, what did you really do? I've never heard it said, and I've never heard anybody talk about it. And he says, well, it's declassified now. I can talk about it. He says, I ran a project called Project Lightning. And Project Lightning, the goal of that was to have a 2 gigahertz computer by 1970.
Interesting.
And I said, well, did you do it? And he says, we got to 1.76 gigahertz.
In 1970. Wow.
In 1970. And so imagine what these guys are doing today. We have no idea, what these guys are doing. And, but I thought that was amazing because that was I said, how long was it until that became, sort of my Apple computer where I could get that? And he said, it was about 30 years.
Frightening, isn't it? It's just frightening.
Brian Josephson, he's a Nobel Prize-winning physicist in quantum mechanics. We went to Cambridge University and we interviewed him on this topic. He's got a whole theory on how it works, and he's very supportive of Psi. And he said all he wanted to talk about every time I turned the camera off and over lunch, he was obsessed with free energy. And the fact that he has a friend who he believes has cracked the nut and has invented free energy, and he says he can't get anybody to listen.
They can't, and we all know. I'm serious. When it comes to free energy, it's there. It's there. It's there in a few different ways, and until this whole fossil fuel thing plays itself out, it's going to stay in the background. There's just no way unless some guy somehow gets to, bring it forward and, not get killed, to be honest with you. And
well, I think you have to care less about making money than you do about sharing the product. Look at Elon Musk. I mean, he's put all his patents online for his cars for whoever wants them. I mean, all his cars without patents.
Right.
The technology that he's using. So, because he wants to foster an industry. And that's what it takes. It takes you sort of kind of taking yourself out of your own ego for a minute and saying, I don't care if I'm the only person that benefits from this. And I think that what's really at stake is the status quo. And that I think also goes for remote viewing, and the reason that Russell has not broken through more, and all of the other people that are out there talking about remote viewing, teaching it, doing these things, the reason they haven't broken through is because you don't need to persecute somebody or put them in prison for talking about something you disagree with. You just have to belittle it and make it sound like it's not real, like it's crazy.
Right.
That's the theme. That is the theme. These guys aren't worried about what I think about them. They're worried about what their father and their mother or their friends think about them. It's and that's anytime you bring the subject up, it's like people don't want to be had.
Lance, we've got 30 seconds left. When is the film going to be ready for release?
The film's going to be ready for release in the fall. We're going to be hitting the festival circuits. It does not have a distributor yet. We're going to be looking for one. The idea is to do a theatrical release. I've had 2 other theatrical films, so I believe that's going to happen. I have a whole company that is devoted to making this kind of material called Waking Universe. You can go to wakinguniverse.com and check in. The site's still under construction, but this is something that is not going to go away. I mean, we've already had interest in distribution, but the film is still being finalized. And as soon as it's ready, we're going to have it out. So I mean, if people go to thirdeyespies.com, they can follow us on Facebook. You can look up the film and get updates, and and all of the support that we can get, the better. The more people that know about this, the better. It's something that I think is going to really take off. I'm super excited about it.
Thank you so much. Lance Mungia, everybody. ThirdEyeSpies.com is a website. Lance, keep rolling that rock uphill. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Lance Mungia, ThirdEyeSpies.com. When I come back after the break, Russell Targ right here. A true national treasure.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Imagine no longer being tied down to your computer, but having the freedom to take live talk radio with you anywhere you go. TalkStream Live introduces our first ever iPhone application. The talk shows you follow now follow you, and your iPhone is now the fastest and easiest way to stay connected to the best talk radio on the internet. Listen to live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. TalkStream Live, now available in the iTunes App Store.
Diabetics brand multivitamins, physician formulated specifically for people who have or are predisposed to diabetes. If your blood sugar numbers are not optimal, Diabetic Special Formula can help you metabolize the nutrients you need for improved results. Don from New York writes, "My blood sugar levels are now in the low 100s. Go to energywave.com. Use promo code TALK for free shipping." This statement has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Did you ever turn to your radio for your favorite talk show to find that it's been preempted for this?
In the air to deep right center. Back goes Lewis to the wall, and it's out of here!
Or this?
And I'm ashamed of you, Hillary, for voting for it.
Do you have a favorite talk radio program that's not available in your city? Just go to TalkStreamLive.com for links to the best streaming talk radio shows. At TalkStream Live, you will find live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All your favorites are here. With such a large selection, you will also discover some new favorites. On the go and still want to listen? With a mobile smartphone, simply type TalkStream Live on your internet browser. Now you can take internet radio with you. You will also find hundreds of music, news, and sports streams. Best of all, the TalkStream Live directory is free and there's never a login required. Remember TalkStreamLive.com, the fastest route between you and your favorite talk radio show.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Bespoke Radio for the masses on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. Very excited. Russell Targ. He's a physicist. He's an author and was a pioneer in the development of the laser and laser applications. He holds a BS in physics from Queens College and did graduate work in physics at Columbia University. Targ has received 2 National Aeronautics and Space Administration awards for inventions and contributions in lasers and laser communications. He has published over 100 scientific papers on lasers, plasma physics, and ESP research. In the 1970s and 80s, Targ co-founded and worked for the CIA-sponsored Stanford Research Institute's investigation into psychic abilities. His work in this new area, called remote viewing, was published in Nature, the Proceedings of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, and in Proceedings of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. In 1997, Targ retired from Lockheed Martin Missiles and Space Corporation as a senior staff scientist, where he developed airborne laser systems for the detections of wind shear. Targ now teaches remote viewing workshops worldwide and continues to write. His books include Limitless Mind, A Guide to Remote Viewing, Transformation of Consciousness, The Reality of ESP, and his autobiography is called, and I love this, Do You See What I See? Memoirs of a Blind Biker. I would like to welcome to the program Russell Targ, and his website is espresearch.com. Russell, good evening, sir. It's an honor.
Good evening. I'm very happy to be with you.
Thank you so much, Russell. And, you know, you get our disclaimer. This is just you and I as friends sitting on a couch talking, and we're going to go where we go, and we're going to end as friends. Are you ready?
Yeah, I like your tagline that the revolution will not be televised. It'll be on the radio. And it's because radio is much more intimate than television.
Yes, it is, isn't it? It really is. And when you can engage, see, this is the thing about that. And thank you for saying that. They don't get to see our faces. They get to just get their brain and imagination and paint their own picture and just join us. Isn't that great? I love radio.
Yeah, I do also. I was on radio for years and years when I was a kid in Chicago, and ever since I worked in a radio studio, I just love the medium.
Nothing like WLS in Chicago.
That's right. I grew up with WLS, listening to the Stockyard returns first thing in the morning.
Yes. I did too. I grew up in Chicago. And the Stockyard and also the Commodities Exchange, you know, downtown. I learned about pork bellies in the 1960s.
I learned about pork bellies in the 1930s.
Yeah. I wish the audience could enjoy what we are talking about, but that's exactly what went on in Chicago at 5 a.m. every single day. So thank you, and welcome to the program, Russell. And, you know, this is what actually, I kind of want to start in a weird area. I've followed you for years. I've listened to so much of your stuff and presentations. But there's one thing that you joke about, and you make, you know, you let people know about your blindness and your eyesight. But you started off in lasers. So did that help, you know, having that issue, or was it something that you had to work towards? Because it on the surface, it doesn't seem like they would go together too well.
Well, like the movies, I'm not actually blind. I'm just legally blind. So what that means is my vision is very subnormal. I see at 20 feet what an ordinary person would see at 200 feet. So my vision is 2200, which constitutes legal blindness. But I actually saw well enough to ride a motorcycle for 35 years, riding through the foothills in Silicon Valley. And I rode carefully. I was a cautious driver. But I did that for a long, long time without serious mishap. Now, my bad vision probably got me interested in optics in graduate school. And then my first job was in lasers. And then I went from lasers to ESP. But my earliest paid employment was doing magic as a young person in New York. So I went magic to optics to psychic stuff. And that seemed like a natural progression for somebody with bad vision to be interested in magic and then to be interested in extrasensory perception because my sensory perception didn't actually work too well.
You know, in a strange way, I see the connection. It seems very natural. Anybody else may look at it, you know, how do you do that? How do you go from magic to lasers to ESP and remote viewing? But in a strange way, the physics and the connection of light and photons and connection of physics and things in the universe, they're all connected, and it makes sense to me.
Well, the basic magic trick is choose a card out of this deck of cards, just lay it down face down. Nobody knows what it is. It's then the magician's job to see that card or to identify it. Pick a card and I'll tell you what it is. That's the basic magic trick. It's the idea of expanded awareness that goes through all playing card magic, which is the most fun kind of magic to do.
Right.
So that's what I really got started in. As a preteen in New York City, I could go to the magic stores on 42nd Street. I could watch people doing magic in the basement of Hubert's Museum, the Free Circus. I could watch a magician up close, and then I could go upstairs to the professional magic shops, talk to the magician and buy tricks, and then do magic on the stage as a teenager. So that was that's what I did when growing up in New York.
That's interesting. How did you, I almost want to talk about magic for a few minutes. How did you, I want to go back before we hit this first break, and we only have a short amount of time with you tonight, but how did you make the transition from lasers and that career over to SRI? Was that directly with Hal, or was that through Von Braun?
I had a lifetime experience. I had a lifetime interest in psychic stuff. When I was in graduate school, I tried to get the psychology department to let me get a degree in psychology, which I was very, very familiar with, but I wanted to take my classes in physics because I knew that I couldn't go into ESP without a PhD in either physics or psychology. And of course, the psychology people thought I was crazy and wouldn't let me do that.
Right.
So I went on and studied physics with the idea that at a certain point in my physics career, I would become well enough known so I could then make the transition into psychic stuff. Because even while I was doing laser research, I had developed an ESP teaching machine, for example. And as you mentioned, the ESP teaching machine was the liaison between my working on lasers, going to a conference on speculative technology, where I met Werner von Braun and Arthur C. Clarke and Jim Fletcher, the administrator of NASA. And von Braun did very, very well with my ESP teaching machine, and he helped me convince Fletcher to let me have a small amount of money to start a program at SRI. So it was really and I should say, my ESP teaching machine is now online as a free internet game called ESP Trainer. So that's my gift to anybody with an Apple computer. You can have this game that we started with von Braun and led to a NASA program and has been in continuous use now for about 50 years, called ESP Trainer. It's yours free at the Apple Store.
Thank you for that, and we'll put that up right now on Twitter in real time. Now,
people do improve their score with this ESP game. It's an entertaining game. It helps you get in touch with the part of yourself that's psychic because it gives you feedback and reinforcement of what it feels like when you're being psychic.
Didn't you and Hal Puthoff, you guys worked together at the same company at the same time? On lasers? Is that right?
We're both born in Chicago,
right?
And each of us had our first industrial job working for the Sperry Gyroscope Company.
Oh, it's gyroscopes,
and we were
right? Right.
And we were both working on high-powered microwave tubes, vacuum tubes, very high power. I was working in Great Neck, New York, he was working in Gainesville, Florida, and I had actually invented something that would make all vacuum tubes work better, a tiny vacuum pump to go in the tube. So I was called to his lab from New York down to Gainesville to help them use the technology that I had invented in the tubes that he was making, but we never met.
That's strange.
We did not.
Synchronicity is.
That's right. We didn't meet until 1972 when Hal was giving a lecture at Stanford University on Soviet America and psychic research. And I had been traveling all over giving lectures just like that. In fact, I had just given a lecture of that name to the NASA Conference on Speculative Technology. So we were both basically microwave technologists, laser technologists at that time, talking about ESP. So I introduced myself to him at his Stanford lecture, and I said, we ought to get together because I'm now 15 years into lasers. I'm ready to quit, and I think I might get some money from NASA and bring it to SRI. And he said, I'm up for that. If you can do that, we got a program.
And so what happened next?
And we started,
what happened next, Russell?
What happened next is I met Von Braun and George Pesdurz, who was the NASA administrator. They promised us $100,000. So we had a big meeting with the president of SRI, Charlie Anderson, Hal Puthoff, and me, Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, who has just passed away, and we all met at SRI. Mitchell said, NASA will support you. Charlie Anderson said, if you keep a low profile, you can do the work. So in September of 1972, Hal and I started a program at SRI.
When you, I want to get deeper right now into SRI, but there's one thing that I kind of want to touch upon for the audience really quick so they can understand how you started to look at this when we discussed the physics of it and how everything is.
You know, it would be a good idea. It would be a good idea if I actually described what we're talking about.
That's what I'm saying.
Our research is called remote viewing. And remote viewing is an ability that we all have to quiet our mind and describe and experience what's going on at a distant place or at a distant time. So we can close our eyes and visualize the surprising things that appear in our awareness. And if we're asked to describe some distant thing or some future event, you can learn to do that quite excellently by describing the pictures that appear in your awareness, and we call that remote viewing.
And the locality, the duality of everything that there is how this is accomplished.
Well, the Buddhists would say there is no duality. The Buddhists say that separation is an illusion.
Right.
And modern quantum physics say that we live in a non-local space-time. That is, when you're talking about something like psychic abilities, our data show that it's no harder to describe the object in the box in front of you than it is to describe something going on across the street or across the world in Soviet Siberia. Increasing the distance absolutely does not make it more difficult to describe accurately what you're targeted on. And not only that, it's no harder to describe an event taking place in the near future than it is to describe a contemporaneous event. And all ESP researchers agree on that. So there's not agreement on how it works, but we all agree that the past 40 years of data show that remote viewing is a non-local ability, which is to say it's independent of distance and independent of time.
Did you have any idea at the very beginning of SRI what remote viewing was? You had your interest in ESP, but did you have any idea what remote viewing was at that time?
Well, Ingo Swann was well-known visionary artist and psychic, and he introduced us to the idea of remote viewing. Now, as a young person, I had had psychic experiences. I had a very supportive boss when I worked at Sperry Gyroscope Company, so I occasionally could tell him about the visions that would come to me as we were driving home to New York City from the island where we worked. And from time to time, I would have a very accurate description of something in his life that he could then verify. So by the time I was mid-20s, I was absolutely convinced that psychic abilities work. Ingo is the one who got us away from card guessing and describing objects in the box, and said that since Ingo, is able to quiet his mind and describe anything on the planet, this object in the box trick was a trivialization of his ability. He wanted to describe things on a planetary basis. So it was Ingo who invented remote viewing by name and invited us to get out of the box and describe things worldwide and off the world besides.
And it was you and Hal, and who else was part of the team in the very beginning?
In the very beginning, it was Hal and me and Ingo Swann, and Pat Price came shortly after Ingo. Pat was a policeman from Burbank, and he and Pat were Pat Price and Ingo were lifetime prodigious psychics, really extraordinary people, and we worked with them for a couple of years doing miracles day after day when both of these guys were able to describe what was going on in the distance, what was happening inside a national security facility in Virginia, what was going on at a secret Soviet weapons factory in Russia, and so forth. And in our third year, the CIA said, can't you get us somebody who's not a famous lifetime psychic? Can't you get us a control? And I had a good friend, Hella Hamid, who is a distinguished photographer for Life magazine and a portrait photographer, and she was just moving to California from New York. And I had known her for a couple of decades, and she was a meditator, but she was not interested in psychic stuff. She was interested in art and wine and photography. A very cultivated woman, spoke many languages. And I said, Hella, we need somebody to take part in ESP experiments at Stanford, and we'll pay you if you'll come and be a psychic for us. And she thought that was very entertaining. But she and I had a good time together, and she thought it was a kick that she was being paid to be psychic. And I explained to her how the remote viewing works, and we sat down for trial number one, and I said, Hal is going to hide somewhere. Please quiet your mind. I want you to describe where he is, and you do that just by looking for surprising images in your awareness. Just make me a little sketch of what surprising thing shows up in your mental screen regarding Hal. And she then drew what I'll just describe as squares within squares within squares. She said, I see nested squares. And Hal was hiding at a pedestrian overpass covered with sheet metal and making squares within squares within squares so people don't jump off the freeway. Right. The wrought iron fence is what they had. And she basically drew 100% correctly what that looked like. So that was the introduction of Hella Hammond as a control in this ESP experiment. And for 10 years, she was with us and was the most reliable person in the program. She did not draw the astonishing, accurate images that Pat Price and Hella and Ingo Swann did, but day after day, as a journeyman physicist, Hella was outstanding. So what that gave us the idea that probably lots of people have psychic abilities which they have never developed. They just need someone did not, I did not teach her how to be psychic. I gave her permission to make use of an ability she already had. So for the first 4 years, it was Hal and me working with Ingo, Pat Price, and Helen Hammond.
How exciting, Russell! With you guys in your room. How exciting was that? I can only imagine. You guys are doing breakthrough stuff. You've obviously got the Department of Defense and the CIA involved, and it's Stanford and NASA, and just, and you've got Ingo there and Pat and Hal and Kit Green coming into the picture. I want to talk about Kit too. But how exciting was it? Did you guys really know at the time what you guys were developing and doing this breakthrough research?
Well, I was very excited about it because it was the culmination of a lifetime desire to do just what we were doing. Hal was the program manager, and the CIA people liked Hal because he was much more stable and, in a way, more matter of fact than I was. So Hal kept the books balanced, and he was very sympathetic to what we were doing. I don't want to mischaracterize him. Hal realized that we were doing remarkable things, but it was my job day after day to sit in a dark room with the psychic of the day, whether it's Pat Price or Hella or some visiting Army officer or the Undersecretary of Defense, and I would have to sit with this person in the dark and say, Hal or your adjutant or some other person is going to hide somewhere. I have no idea where they've gone, but if you sit here with me and do what I tell you, this is all going to work out all right. So I spent 10 years sitting in the dark helping people develop their psychic abilities. And naturally, I developed my own spiritual awareness. So my situation is very unusual, because I was a Buddhist when we started, but thanks to the CIA, I had to sit in the dark for 10 years meditating, helping people experience their own timeless awareness, and that was a hell of a job to do. That I consider myself extremely fortunate to be in that spot at that time.
I've heard you describe, there's two important words here, or three. Quiet the mind. We're going to be up against a break here in 3 minutes. Can you describe for me what that means?
And if I have somebody like the Undersecretary of Defense coming into the lab and says, I want to see something psychic, and he says, who's going to do this? And I say, you are. So we have this disjuncture where he thought that I was going to do it or bring up Madam Catherine, and so he has to suddenly figure out that he's going to do it. And I say, I'll be responsible. If you just do what I tell you, this will all work out. So I said, take a couple of deep breaths and quiet your mind. And I don't tell him how to do that because I'm not a meditation instructor. But I can just say, quiet your mind, take a couple of deep breaths. Now, Hal and your adjutant are off someplace in the Bay Area. Tell me what surprising shows up in your awareness. And those are the magic words. I start out saying, we have a target that needs a description. And I want you to describe the surprising elements that show up in your awareness. And I've sort of given you right there the whole protocol to lead somebody into a remote viewing episode.
When that happens, is there a way to control? Man, this is kind of a deep question, and we only have 60 seconds here, but we'll pick it up on the other side. Control when? Because you could be looking into the future, and they may not know that, or maybe even the past. Is there a way to help that along and try to stay in the now if you were trying to?
Oh yeah, I will know whether we're looking for a contemporaneous object.
Right.
I'll say, Hal and your adjutant are someplace in the San Francisco Bay Area now, going to describe what they're experiencing now. For example, I don't want them to describe what they experienced while they're driving there.
Right.
I say, it's 3 o'clock. It's 3 o'clock now. Tell me what's going on.
Yeah, because I can almost imagine, and I'll close with this really quick, where they may slip up and actually tell you where they're going to be, instead of where they are in the now. And it's an interesting concept, and we'll talk about more of that right after the break. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, a true national treasure, Russell Targ, is with us. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We'll be back more with Russell right after this short break. Stay with us.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
KGRA Radio. Intelligent talk.
Why do people order Life Change Tea? Because Life Change Tea helps the digestive system. Life Change Tea helps the colon unclog. The tea also helps with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and many, many other health issues. Life Change Tea also tastes great. And Life Change Tea is not just green tea. Life Change Tea is a unique blend of 8 different herbs that go to town, cleaning your body of harmful toxins, bacteria, and parasites. Our tea is number 1. Are you ready for your life change? Let the tea help you. Log on to our online store of helpful products to get your body on track. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Or you can call us at 928-308-0408. That's 928-308-0408. Not all tea is equal. Read our website of all the factual testimonies that prove that Life Change Tea is working. Health is important, and our quality of life is very important. Don't wait to order. Expect a life change with Life Change Tea at getthetea.com.
Hi, I'm Richard Dolan. When I'm not hosting my radio program, The Richard Dolan Show on KGRA, or writing new books on UFOs, I run a publishing company. I'm proud to say that Richard Dolan Press has published some of the most fascinating books available on UFOs and related subjects. They include Dr. Bruce Maccabee's classic analysis of the UFO cover-up, David Marler's breakthrough book on triangular UFOs, Dr. Richard Sauter's unique work on underground bases, and other classics by Grant Cameron, Chase Kletsky, and Dr. Bob Wood. Not to mention intriguing works by Eve Lorgan and Laurie MacDonald that deal with truly bizarre phenomena. I'm proud to publish such high-quality and original works, and there are several amazing books about to be released over the next few months. Go to richarddolanpress.com to learn more.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Go Beckley Tappy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. Tonight, Russell Targ is with us. We're talking about SRI, the Stanford Research Institute, and the remote viewing program and the 20-year program that was funded by the CIA. And Russell, before the break, I was actually talking, one of the things I'm so interested in time travel and the possibilities of that. And when we deal with remote viewing, that is something that comes into play immediately. And so,
before we go into time travel, let me tell you about some time traveling. I'm going to be describing how to do remote viewing at the Conscious Life Expo in LA, February 19th, Friday, February 19th. I have a workshop there at 8 o'clock, Conscious Life Expo, and I will not be there in my body, but I've done a video with Lance Mungia, and in the video I will carry an audience through a whole remote viewing episode where I have an object and they will be describing what that object is, and I will lead them through the experience of doing remote viewing exactly as we did at SRI for a decade. So if people want to learn how we did remote viewing for the CIA during that whole period, come to the Conscious Life Expo, February 19th at 8 o'clock, and I'll be there with my ghostly image, and you can learn remote viewing.
We have all the links up for Conscious Life. We'll be there all weekend. We're presenting too as well, and I'm excited. I will go and check out the presentation. I will be there. I'll be there in real time, Russell. So we'll get the links up. You know what? I'm going to tell you a little funny little story. This past weekend, we got back. We were at a conference up in Big Bear, and we had a little get together in our hotel room after one of the evenings up there, and we had 15, 20 people over, for drinks and food and hanging out. And one of the ladies that was there, she's well dressed, and I started to talk to her, and she was an attorney from New York, and a private practice attorney. She looked like an attorney, by the way. And so I said, oh, okay, that's interesting, but what brings you from New York to Big Bear, California to a UFO conference? And she says, are you ready, Russell? I'm ready. She goes, I'm a remote viewer, and I'm a student. I said, really? Now we're talking, right? Let's talk about this. And it was just amazing. And she said she had no idea that she had this talent or this gift, but she learned how to do it, and she's trying to improve every day. But she's, and she said she's gotten really, really good and really confident in what she was doing. But
I've taught thousands of people all over the world how to do remote viewing, and it's fun to do, because it's very easy to teach, and people are so grateful after you show them how to do that. In a weekend workshop, I may have 40 or 50 people, and many of them will turn out to be excellent remote viewers.
Isn't that fascinating?
And all of them will have. And my promise to the people is that everybody will have either done something psychic or seen something psychic. And if that didn't happen, I'll give you your money back. And nobody ever asked for their money back.
Right. And
so go ahead.
Well, it's because we all the universe is connected, my friend, and that's it. It's not a gift. We all have that ability.
That's what I'm trying to put out in the film. That every 20 minutes in the film, I remind people that psychic abilities are real, and you can do what these people are doing. And if you want to see a 4-minute coming attraction of a film that Lance described earlier, the film is called Third Eye Spies, and the website for the film appropriately is thirdeyespies.com, and that will give you a description of the film and a link to the 4-minute coming attraction.
Yeah, we'd
be happy if you would put up a link to thirdeyespies.com.
We've done it 20 times. We have it up on our website. We have it on Facebook. We have it in Twitter right now in real time. And we were watching it in one of the commercial breaks. It's an absolutely fascinating documentary, and I cannot wait till it comes out.
Now, one of the high points of my life was the decade where I was teaching people to do remote viewing at Stanford Research Institute, working with the CIA, looking at the Russians, finding downed airplanes, finding American hostages. And the darkest moment during that time was when one of our preeminent remote viewers, one of our preeminent remote viewings, Pat Price, described a weapons site in the Soviet Union And usually these top secret documents are stamped downgrade in 20 years. This was such a hot result that it was stamped exempt from automatic downgrading, which meant that in 20 years later, 1995, it was still not downgraded because it was such a hot, remarkable description of things buried in the Soviet Union that were of great strategic interest at the time, but they weren't going to let me have it. As it turned out, my son, who's an attorney, worked with our local congressman, and in fact, on the Freedom of Information, I got a whole trove of principally our information declassified in 1995, and that allowed me to write my book, The Reality of ESP, and it was the key to making this film, because I then had all this previously top secret information that I could fold into the film that I'm making with Lance. The stuff we're showing in the film, the material we're showing in the film, is a deep, dark, top secret material from the 2 decades of research at Stanford, spying on the Russians, looking at Chinese atomic bomb tests, finding downed airplane in Africa for President Carter, describing a submarine, a big Russian submarine, locating our hostages, finding a kidnapped American general. So we were really operational. We were really the X-Files. We were doing operational ESP for the CIA during that decade. And with the other half of our time, we were doing research in how to improve psychic abilities, how far into the distance you can look, how far into the future you can look, and we were publishing those things in the engineering journals where Hal and I, as physicists, were accustomed to publish our scientific findings. So this was really the first time that ESP research had been going on for 100 years. This is the first time that a major scientific journal published the results of scientific findings. And we did that in Nature magazine, which is a distinguished English journal, and the Proceedings of the Engineering Society, which goes out to 500,000 American engineers. So there are really two sides to the program. The scientific side, where we published our finding,
right.
The operational side, where we found the hidden airplanes.
Did you ever feel that because there is the scientific side, and you guys are trying to do your research and discover and expand this, and then there's the other side with the CIA and the Department of Defense and what their agenda was. Did you feel like at any point that they were pushing you too far in a direction that you guys didn't want to go into, and one that could, even be life-threatening for that matter?
I certainly did. I was founder of the program with Hal in 1972, but I declared my independence on Independence Day in 1982 because the program was becoming more and more classified and operational. And then by 1982, I could not publish anything whatsoever. And I discussed that in the film somewhat.
Yeah.
But there was an embargo against publishing anything. They explained to us that our purpose is not to understand this. Our purpose is to do what we're told. And I, of course, didn't go to school to become a physicist, to become a psychic spy for the CIA. So at that point, I left the CIA and SRI and wrote a book describing how this all works. I, of course, did not disclose any of the secret material until I'd go to jail.
Right.
But I talked about the parts of this that were not classified. So indeed, as you say, it became more and more claustrophobic as it became 100% operational, and that wasn't interesting to me.
Was there?
I returned to my roots and went back to lasers.
Yeah, exactly. Well, was there a point? Did you ever tell the CIA or Kit Green, you know what? No. Okay, that's taking things a bit too far.
No, I was aware that by that time that people were really omniscient.
Right.
That is to say, we all pretty much understood that by 1980 we understood that an experienced psychic could give you the correct answer to any question that actually had an answer. So that you could look into the future, you could forecast stock markets, you'd find lost things. And in fact, I wrote a book shortly after that called Limitless Mind, with the implication is there are no limits on what you can do psychically. So we all understood that there was no limit to what a psychic is able to describe.
And how about yourself?
And that didn't scare me, because I sort of had an idea that was true anyway.
Well, I want to talk about the first time that you actually did your first remote viewing. I mean, did you have any idea? Well, I'm going to talk about that first time, because I think you even surprised yourself, didn't you?
Well, the first time I did a remote viewing in this program was when I took the part of Pat Price, the great psychic policeman. We were tracking Hal Puthoff through South America. That is, Pat and I would sit in our little electrically shielded room. Just as we say that, the image just popped up on my screensaver right in front of me. It's a nice coincidence. So I was in the shielded room with Price day after day, describing his impressions of where Hal was in South America. And then on day 5, Price didn't show up. So I'm sitting in a screen room. I made a tape. This is Russ Targ and Pat Price describing where Hal is in South America. But Price isn't here. So in the spirit that the show must go on, I'll do it myself. And I just sat there and closed my eyes, and I saw an airport on an island, and I drew the convergent lines representing the airport. And I said, there's sand and grass on the right, and there's an airport building on the left, and drew that. And I said, surprisingly, right at the end of the runway is the ocean. And I wrote ocean at the end of the runway. And 10 days later, Hal came back with a picture of the place, and it was exactly as I had drawn it. So that was the payoff of that is that it shows that remote viewing is so easy that even a scientist can do it. But the drawing was so accurate that we were all really quite stunned that Russell, who had never done any of this stuff before, turned out a drawing as accurate as anything we'd ever seen. And you can see that drawing on my website, which is espresearch.com. And it's in my book, The Reality of ESP. I have all these drawings in my book, The Reality of ESP.
I'm watching Twitter here, and the question keeps coming up about Pat Price's death. Do you think that there was a relationship with what happened to him and the SRI program and the CIA?
Well, let me tell you what the facts are. We worked with Pat for a couple of years and thought he was totally outstanding, the most psychic person we had ever heard of.
That's right.
Or seen.
Right.
And then in 1975, he described a Soviet weapons factory in Semipalatinsk. And I would sit with him, and he made a drawing of a crane and some spheres and some other stuff. And the CIA came and looked at those, and he made those drawings in response to being given the coordinates of the super secret underground thing in Russia. And they then showed us the truth as best they had. And he had described that with unprecedented accuracy. He drew the crane like a mechanical drawing expert. And 2 weeks later, the CIA hired Pat Price away from us and took him to work full-time for the CIA at their facility in Virginia. And a few months after that, Price was dead.
And that's it. I don't mean it. That's it. That there is more. I mean, but that's all that. Those are the facts of the case.
Many people have different opinions about how Price happened to die, and we discussed this at some length in the film. And it's a very controversial issue, so I don't want to pursue it on the air. But what I've told you is correct. That Price died about 5 months after leaving SRI, moving to Langley, Virginia, and working for the CIA, and doing extraordinarily accurate remote viewing for the CIA. We discussed that in the film.
Right.
They gave him tests even more stringent than what we did at SRI, because they could control the number of people who knew the answer. And Price demonstrated that he was able to do anything that they wanted him to do.
Is there any connection?
And then he died.
Right. Russell, is there any connection? I want to get back to time travel really quick, and thank you for addressing Pat Price, because I know I've heard you say over the years how extraordinarily gifted he was, and the respect that you have for him, and you only worked with him, and just for a couple of short years, and it's just the audience kept going back to this, and it has become a piece of legend, as you know. The story is there, and so I just
Pat Price functioned as a psychic person. As we would have lunch with him every day, and he would tell us what's going on in the White House, what's going on in the war in Israel. He, for example, told us that Nixon's going to go. Nixon's days are numbered. And I said, oh, my God, you mean Agnew's going to be president? He said, no, Agnew's going to be exposed to the criminal he is. Agnew will go first, and then Nixon will go. And that was a piece of information that no person living knew at the time.
Right.
And there was no preamble. He just described it over as cherry pie and coffee at lunch, where all you wanted to know what the president is doing or what's happening in the Israeli war. He said, don't worry about that. The Egyptians are shooting down Israeli airplanes, but they're soon going to get jammers from the United States so they can block the Israeli, so the Israelis can block the Egyptian ground-to-air missiles. And that was true, and that was secret for several years until that was eventually revealed. But that was just cherry pie and coffee conversation for Pat Price. Just ask me anything. If it's knowable, I'll tell you what the answer is.
You know what's funny about you know what's funny about that? You and Hal and Ingo and Hella and throw in Joe McMoneagle, whatever. But you guys can't lie to each other, can you? You guys were all gifted.
You would never lie to a psychic,
right?
Psychologists are always trying to do tricky experiments that involve lying to a psychic, and they always fail. And the psychologists are always so surprised that the experiment didn't work.
It's so funny, and with
you mentioned Joe McMoneagle is probably the greatest living psychic today.
Well,
he was one of 6 Army guys that Hal and I chose from a bigger group, and we chose them at the request of the Army general controlling INSCOM, the Intelligence Command. We chose 6 guys, and I trained them how to do remote viewing, and then they went back to Fort Meade, and the 6 guys, including Joe McMoneagle, were the bedrock of a Army psychic corps that was in operation for a decade.
Did Joe know coming to you? Did he know that he was that gifted, or did he volunteer? I mean, how did that happen? I mean, we know what he turned into today, and he's great. But
well, there were 30 people who had been pre-screened by Skip Atwater and a couple of other people who had selected people who, have you ever had psychic experience in your life?
Of course.
Are you willing to risk your advancement in the Army to be part of this experiment?
Right.
And we had 30 people who said yes, and Hal and I then interviewed them. I chose Joe because he had intense psychic experiences when he was in Vietnam. So he told me some stories that sounded exactly like remote viewing, and precognitive remote viewing. That he was able to. His story that sold me is that as he was arriving in Vietnam, he saw a large yellow aircraft, just like the green one he had just gotten off, and he said he knew then that he was going to be evacuated as a living person. And 10 months later, he was evacuated by an Air American plane, which was indeed a big yellow airplane. And he had seen that clearly in advance and understood what it meant. And I said, "You're my man."
Yes. And so I guess it was Joe, out of everybody from the early program that you had trained and worked with, was he the, your most, your prized pupil and the one that you're most proud of?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm trying to think of the name of there was another Army officer who was really quite excellent, and I can't recall his name right now. But Joe is a star. There's no doubt about it. Joe is one of a kind. He was given the Army Legion of Merit award when he left the Army, which is a highly prestigious awards like the what's the
Congressional Medal of Honor, Valor.
The Congressional Medal of Honor.
Right.
It's a very high award. Very few people get it. And Joe was given that for his 150 unique intelligence operations that he did by himself. And that's all called out in the Legion of Merit Award.
Absolutely extraordinary. And now today, as you look back, Russell, do you think that the CIA still has this program ongoing in Langley?
I think it's pretty likely. I think that they took Price away from us as a first step in gaining control of the program. I personally trained up 2 CIA operatives at SRI during this period, and they went back to Langley and worked with Price. And this is all would have been secret, but is now revealed in the film by Ken Chris, that the man and woman that I trained came back, worked with Price, and were the beginnings of a little CIA psychic community that was self-maintaining, had nothing to do with me, at CIA headquarters. And since remote viewing, let's say that what I'm describing is basically true, that people have the ability to describe what's going on in the distance. It seems absurd to me that knowing what the CIA knew about our work, that they wouldn't pursue it. I mean, why would they not want to pursue that? I mean, Price and Joe were drawing architecturally accurate drawings of things that were hidden. Price was able to penetrate the code room of foreign embassies. I mean, he could do whatever you wanted him to do. Why would you not pursue that?
That's interesting.
So I have no personal knowledge that the CIA is doing that, but my intelligence said that it would be ridiculous to assume that they're not doing it, given what they knew.
I have 2 quick questions that I want to get in, and I'm going to thank you in advance for coming on tonight. And we'll get Conscious Life Expo behind us, and then we'll get you back on the show, and we'll go a little bit deeper. But this is from Walter, and he says, do you have to anchor the remote viewing to the current world line in order to predict accurate future events?
No, the answer to that is no. To predict future events, we often will say one of four things is going to happen in the future, and then we'll get somebody to make an association with those four things. And that distant person will say, if A is going to occur, I'll show you a coffee cup. If B occurs, I'll show you a flashlight. If C occurs, I'll show you a calculator. If D occurs, I'll show you a pair of scissors. And, of course, he doesn't tell me any of that. He just makes that association.
Right.
And then he says, okay, and I'm going to tell me what I'm going to hand you next Monday. And I say, I see something metal. It looks like a long, pointy thing with a red handle. That's what I get. And he says, well, that's not the coffee cup. It's not the calculator. It's exactly the pair of scissors. And the only way that Targ could describe the scissors is if the market went down 10% next Monday. So that next Monday when the market goes down 10%, he'll show me the scissors.
Right. Interesting. And
we did that experiment and made $100,000 in the market doing that trick is called associated remote viewing.
And you and I are going to talk more about that on Monday before the markets open. Okay, one last question, Russell. Is there a connection between remote viewing and astral projection? Astral projection.
Well, that's I don't know if I can do that in the 1 minute remaining. There's an out-of-body experience that people talk about, where a remote viewing is very safe, quiet, sanitary activity. You're sitting in your chair describing what's going on in a distant place. That's remote viewing. Now, an interviewer like myself can say, okay, let's open the door and see what else is going on there. And my viewer, like Hella, will say, it's dark. And I turn on the lights. And she says, okay, now I can see what's going on. And the door behind the desk there. And I say, okay, let's open the door and go down the steps. So by this point, the interviewer and the viewer have made a significant personal commitment to move their whole awareness to this distant place. And from time to time, a person doing that can find an interaction with another person at that distant place. And that interaction may be pleasant or unpleasant. But once you decide to move your awareness to a distant place, so-called out-of-body experience, you are then vulnerable to having a bad trip. So with a beginning remote viewer, I keep it all safe and sanitary in the lab. Tell me what you see on your mental slate. With an experienced remote viewer, you can go traveling and bring increasing amounts of your sensitivity, emotionality, or even sexuality to a distant location. Once having made that commitment, you can get lots more information, but you are available to have a frightening experience.
I want to thank you for everything that you have done. You have lived an extraordinary life so far, and all of the contributions that you have done, not only for our country, but for the world and consciousness in general. And I want you to leave with this last question. What kind of motorcycle do you own now?
I no longer own my motorcycle. I'm newly married about 10 years ago. My former wife passed away, and I married somebody that I had known. And we were married for about a year until she finally realized how very bad my vision was. Because I give a very good impersonation of somebody who could actually see what they're doing. So finally, after we're married for about a year, Patricia said, "You've got to get rid of that motorcycle. I don't want to be married to you all crashed up. It's not fair to me to be riding around seeing as little as I now realize you see." So about 8 years ago, I sold my Honda 250 Nighthawk.
Oh.
So I am presently without a motorcycle.
Oh, man. Well, you know what? You did it until you couldn't, and that's all that matters, right?
But there's a picture of me riding my Nighthawk in the film. It's not a becoming attraction, but I ride across the screen in my Nighthawk.
Thank you so much, Russell. Thank you for everything. Keep rolling that rock uphill, and I'll be at your presentation there, video
Thank you.
or otherwise.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. And all I can say is that I've got to do a lot of interesting things in my life. I've been very fortunate to be given that opportunity.
You have, and I hope that I can do half as much. And seriously, thank you so much, Mr. Targ. A fascinating conversation tonight. We'll get you back on after Conscious Life. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Russell Targ, and I mean it. That right there is a national treasure. Think about what he has done. I've got a couple of friends out there, and without naming names, that have been extraordinary, that have done things. I mean, and that you have to look up to. They've gone out and done it. You have the other people that talk about it. Maybe I should, maybe I won't, maybe that. And then you have other people that go out there and get it done. And Russell Targ is one of those. And you sit and you talk to Russell. And I love my audience, but I'm going to ask everybody out there, what have you done lately? What have I done? Nothing. Russell bleeping Targ. I'm going to take a quick break. This is Fade to Black. I ran late. Sorry about that, but there was no way I was going to interrupt Russell Targ for a commercial. So there you go. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Thank you, Russell Targ. Thank you, Lance Mungia. And I'll be back right after this. My brain hurts. I'll be right back.
Vivica Fox here, and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
Not being able to fall asleep is so frustrating. The tossing, the turning, the adjustment of pillows and blankets. Eventually you just decide to get up and start your day really early. It doesn't have to be this way though. Power Sleep is an all-natural non-prescription formula that will help you sleep like a baby. It contains neurotransmitter nutrients that promote the production of serotonin, which is responsible for feelings of well-being. Power Sleep is easy to digest and absorb and is made in a base of active probiotics. Don't miss another night of sleep. Order your Power Sleep at EnergyWave.com or call 800-TURTLE-5. Add Power Vites to your cart while you're browsing. Perfect for Monday mornings. They're a complete multivitamin and mineral formula that will give you the energy you need to get through your day. Nourish your immune system and feel great. Get all the info and place your order at EnergyWave.com. Enter code word SLEEP to get free shipping. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Hello, Fadernauts. Are you looking for the ultimate Bluetooth speaker system? Well, check this out. The Studio Dome surround sound system, featuring the Studio Dome 1 SD1 and the Studio Boombox SBB wireless Bluetooth speakers, is the perfect way to get surround sound without all of the cable headaches. With its own hard shell custom carrying case for taking your surround sound experience on the go. Each hard shell case comes packed with an SBB, 2 SD1s, cables, and power. It's just $99. And you use the promo code Jimmy, and you get yourself some free shipping. Once again, Studio Dome brings you the best deal on the net. Anywhere. Just go to the Studio Dome banner, JimmyChurchRadio.com, promo code Jimmy. Go Beckley Teppy.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. How you doing? How you doing? That was an amazing night. Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Russell. And our little experience, look, when it comes to remote viewing, and by the way, I will comment on the tweet that I just tweeted, and everybody needs to go and click on that. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. When it comes to remote viewing, I've had my own experiences. I've had my own direct relationship. Everybody knows what happened with the Malibu base and Mr. Reagan, who came on, not President Reagan, but and the hair stood. I freaked that night that happened, and we immediately got him on the show. But aside from that, talking to Teresa up in Big Bear about her experience and journey with remote viewing. It's a remote viewing is real. This is something that not only scientifically, but it just needs to be. It's got a weird reputation that I don't think is deserved. I believe that everything is connected. And if you and everybody, if you are alive and your veins are pumping blood, then you are connected to everything else. That's just physics, So if you are able to tap into that and quiet your mind, I want to learn how to do it. I do. I don't think it's that difficult. You just got to be told a few specific things. And move forward with it. I think it's absolutely fascinating. Now, really quick, let me go back and thank you, Lance. Thank you, Russell. I just posted a link, and let's see if anybody has retweeted it. If you are smart, you have retweeted. If you are really smart, you are at that link that I just tweeted, which is from NASA. In January, mission scientists there released a full 360-degree view of the Bagnall Dune Field region on the surface of Mars. Now, right now, you can go and experience it yourself. Click on that link. It says YouTube. I don't know how they put the video together. It doesn't matter because you can go, you click on that YouTube link, and it's a virtual reality experience. Now, I'm going to give you a hint. You push the resolution in YouTube to its highest setting that your monitor will support, and then go to full screen. It's bleeping great. You click and grab it with your mouse, and you've got a full 360-degree up and down. You can go up to the sky and look at the sun. You can rotate this thing around and look, and I'm telling you, the resolution is stupid. It is an incredible. That's the reason to own the internet. Stuff like that. A couple of years ago, almost 3 years ago, Rita found a 300, and caller, stay right there. I'll get to you in just a second. Rita found a 360-degree flyby controllable Giza Plateau. And you could pick your cameras and go and zoom. You can go right any direction around the Sphinx. Just control it. It was amazing. And Rita, we should go and get that back up. We pulled it down for a couple of reasons, and it had to do with audio. Because you couldn't play the viewer and watch the show or listen to the show at the same time. We couldn't get that stupid thing to shut off. And we wrote to the company and said, hey, can you let us have access to this, but take the audio out? We don't need the audio. We just need to be able to, because it was so much fun. and we wanted everybody to do it during the show. And it was anyway. Now this is the same thing, but it's on Mars, and you can look around, and there is some funky stuff. I thought I saw footprints. Yeah, I did. So go and click on it. If you are smart, you clicked on it and you're checking it out right now, and you are making comments in Twitter going, "Holy bleeping crap. This is really cool." All right. I got a couple phone calls coming in. All right. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling? You're live right now. 3, 2, 1. Sorry. All right. I'll keep the phone lines open. 323-825-5045. 323-825-5045. Is that incredible? Who has... Oh, man. Let's try this again. All right. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling? 3, 2, 1. Okay, that's the last time you get to call in. Sorry about that. You're either there or you are not. I'll leave them open. 323-825-5045. Yeah, this Mars thing is nuts. And just crank up. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. All right. We're just a month away from the launch of the world's biggest aircraft. The world's biggest ever. It's 300 feet long. It's packed with enough helium to fill up 15 Olympic-sized swimming pools. It's humongous. It was originally designed as part of the U.S. Army initiative, and it looks like a combination of spacecraft and airship. And it's not rigid. It's called the Airlander. Now, it was a U.S. Army project, but then that got stopped. It was purchased by the UK-based Hybrid Air Vehicles and converted to support civilian flights. Go over to jimmychurchradio.com, or go over to the Facebook page for Jimmy Church Radio and check it out. It's amazing. It can carry, check this, 48 people at a time. Yeah, it's smaller than a jet, but that's not the point. It can hover and land anywhere, including ice, sand, water, doesn't matter. It can be used to transport goods and people and whatever, but that's not the cool part. The cool part is this thing can stay airborne for 2 weeks at a time, cruising at 90 miles an hour at 20,000 feet. Now we've got something. It's like a cruise ship for the skies. 2 weeks living in luxury. It can fly all around the world, 2 weeks at a time. This thing is badass. I want one, and I want to go. I really do. The Islamic State has lost thousands of fighters in Iraq and Syria. White House made this announcement, so then you can believe what you want. But apparently, the praising that came down from the Oval Office for the U.S.-led coalition's efforts, which are the latest American intelligence estimates, show that there are now up to 25,000 militants and 6,000 less than previously thought. In other words, according to the new assessment, that the Islamic State has thinned out from a previously estimated number of about 31,500. And they are saying it's because of the Russian air campaign. It's because of the U.S.-led coalition, and that we're doing this and we're getting the and now it's 25,000. That number is so small to me. There's something not right. Now, if we go back and think about Go to Desert Storm. And what was the second one called? Whatever that was. And how we rolled across, a million-man army, as bad as the Iraqi army was or as good as it was, it doesn't matter. Rolled over it in 4 days. 4. And we cannot. And it's not that we don't have the ability. It's that we won't do it. And that if the Islamic State is real, Daesh, if it's real, and the concerns are real, the beheading videos are real, and everything is real, Raqqa. If it's all real, what are they doing in control of anything? With 25,000, 20,000, it doesn't make any sense, does it? And what the White House doesn't get, when they release this kind of statement, what they don't get is the first thing we say to ourselves, what's the problem? How can this possibly keep on going? I don't want to put our troops in harm's way. I don't want to put any troops in harm. I don't want to put anybody's children in. I don't want to do that. But the point is, it's a cleanup operation. A few hours. That's what it is. It's ridiculous that they would make this kind of statement. Either don't say this at all. Don't say it at all. We don't need to hear it. How can 25,000 anybody dictate world policy? Not the United States, the world. Russia, push Russia around? How is it possible? It doesn't make any sense. You make this kind of statement, and all it is confusing. It doesn't make any sense. They are not that good. It's not 25,000 Navy SEALs. It's not 25,000 Marines. It's not what's going on here, Special Forces. It's 25,000 yahoos. That's what it is. It's unbelievable that they would make that kind of statement. Got a call coming in from Vegas. I'm going to grab it. Why not? Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Nelson from New Jersey.
Hey, Nelson from New Jersey. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. Hold on one second. Let me just pause your show real quick.
Yeah. Pause it. We've got like 3 minutes. What's on your mind?
Okay. No, I was just looking at your post you put up on your Facebook about the 360 video.
Yeah, did you check it out?
Checking it out. Like, I see what you're saying. There's tracks.
You see it?
It doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, you see it, right? Isn't that trippy?
Yeah, I mean, like, how is this thing positioned? Like, 'cause it looks like it's just like kind of floating there.
Yeah.
And then there's tracks. There's tracks off to the one side, but even the tread marks don't even match up to the wheels of the rover.
I did the same thing. I went around and I was looking. You can see the wheels and you can see what kind of indentation, what kind of track marks it would be leaving, right? So you look around for that,
yeah.
You don't see it. And it also doesn't match up with that tread pattern or footprints or that's there right next to the rover. And so you did the same. So I'm glad that you saw it, because when I saw that, I was like, wait a minute, what the heck is that? That looks like a footprint.
Yeah, it's weird. It's almost like they just kind of puzzled this together almost. I mean, it's pretty cool the way it's all set up, but it's almost like, I don't know.
Yeah, and did you
something up?
And I don't know, because it's a 360-degree view and how you're doing it, but you saw that little track footprint thing that's there, right? Look right behind it, that debris field that doesn't match anything else for 360 degrees, and it's right next to the rover. It looks square, doesn't it? The way
yeah.
Do you see that?
Yeah, there's chunks, but everything's
Square.
It's like brutally broken up.
Yep. And it doesn't match anything else around it. Now, there's one other thing that's interesting, and thank you for noticing that, Nelson, because I needed somebody else to tell me that I wasn't going crazy, because that looks like something, doesn't it? Now, when you swing, when you swing around to the left, and you go around to the left, the opposite side of the footprints that you and I are talking about, and you go to the left, does it look like there's something out there floating and you see the shadow of it underneath? It looks like some kind of floating rock or something. It's all by itself. It's the only black shadow.
Yeah.
Isn't that?
It's almost like
it's floating.
It's almost like there's a shadow going the opposite way. Sort of like, and then you look at everything else, everything's coming from that right side to the left.
Bingo.
And then that's like either coming straight down or from the left to the right.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, so what I need to do, I didn't have the time to do it today. You know what? I spent like 30 minutes today just watching it over and over again and spinning it around, and it, you can't zoom. So what I need to do is do some screen captures in high res and then start to blow up some of those things, because that looks like something is floating in the background with the way that shadow is, because it doesn't match everything else. If you go up to the sun, right? Have you done that yet? Have you looked up and seen the sun right above you?
Yeah, it kind of looked like almost like you're looking at like Google Earth or something like that, and you zoom in on the top.
Yeah. So you go. Yeah, and so the sun is above you, and you can see where the angle of the sun is, and it doesn't match the shadow of what is out there. There shouldn't be a shadow underneath. I mean, there's only a shadow if it's floating, is what I'm trying to say. If it's on the ground, then the shadow's in the wrong direction. It's pretty interesting. So I need to zoom in on what that object is out there. It's great.
Yeah, it looks like a mosaic of a 360 panorama. So a lot of it doesn't match. I mean, it matches up like scale wise and like horizon wise, but if you like get into the detail of it, like none of the shadows match up, and like the sun, and just like a couple other things.
Yeah, I can tell you're looking. Yeah, you're looking at it while you're talking to me, and also, yeah, that's okay. And then also over on the same side with the footprints, and then you look off in the distance where the smooth sand is. It looks like there's tire tracks going through that sand. Did you see that too as well? I mean, that's exactly what it looks like. Swing back around to the right, and then look.
Okay, yeah, off in the distance.
Yeah,
right?
Off in the distance. You see the smooth sand? Does that look like tire tracks going through there, like somebody had a dune buggy? That's what it looks like.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, it could be the wind. It probably is, but when I went around and looked at this 360-degree view, I just saw stuff. That's what I saw, man. I just saw stuff. I was stopping and looking all the time. The moon isn't that interesting. Man, I've walked around the valley here in Burbank, and it's not as interesting as the stuff that is in that 360-degree shot, man. So, Nelson, yeah, thank you for calling in. And if you see anything interesting, let me know, okay?
All right, no problem, man.
Hey, you have a great night. Thank you, Nelson.
All right, you too, Jimmy.
That's what I'm talking about. Thank you so much. Last-minute call and a great call at the end of the show. Thank you, Nelson. Thank you, Lance, and thank you, Russell Targ. Absolutely fascinating show tonight. All the best. Tomorrow night, we are live with Fader Night, and we will have some pictures of Spoon's new owner, Brandon. I think we're doing that first thing tomorrow. Fade to Black's executive producers, Rita Kamarian. Shows produced by Hilton J. Paul, Mark D. Kovar, LJ3, Renee, Mark Dunbar, and Jonas. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Viteau, and Mark D. Kovar. Fady by Dale. Webmaster is Drew, the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Syndication, KGRA, The Planet. Tomorrow night is Fader Night. Open lines all night long. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2016 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I want everybody to be safe. Until tomorrow, go Beckley Teppy.